Good morning, afternoon, or evening, y'all. My name is Shannon, and today is the 5th day of the 12 days of Vlogmas on my channel. I'm so excited to be sitting here with you guys. So, today's video is the top 10 best and the top 10 worst books I read this year. Now, we're going to start with the best first because I like to hear good news first. So, these are in no particular order, so just bear with me. The first book I have to talk about is obviously Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I read this for the first time back in March, and there's definitely a vlog of me reading it on my channel. But I really wanted this to be the first classic literature book I read in my adult life, and I was absolutely correct in making that choice because this is one of the best books I have ever read in my entire life. The writing is basically artistry in this book. It's so incredibly profound and beautiful and the epitome of what a romance book should be. And ever since I read this, no romance book hits the same for me. But if you are unaware of what this story is about, it is about Elizabeth and Jane Bennet, and their mother desperately wants to marry her daughters off. I believe there are 5 daughters in total, and Elizabeth and Jane are the eldest. And there is a very rich man, Mr. Bingley, who comes to town, and she's really trying to set Jane up with him. And Mr. Bingley's best friend also comes, and his name is Mr. Darcy. And immediately, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth do not like each other at all. Elizabeth is a very willful girl, and Mr. Darcy kind of said something to offend her right off the bat. So she was immediately prejudiced against him. Now, Mr. Darcy is the most prideful person I have ever read about. He really believes in, like, properness and society and just the rules of society, and it's just such an exceptionally beautiful story, and I would recommend anyone read this. Oh, also, I rated that 6 stars. It is one of the only like 5 books I've ever rated 6 stars. Okay, next we have A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This is the same author as the Ruthless Vows Divine Rivals duology, and this one I believe is adult fantasy and Divine Rivals is YA fantasy, but this book is so good. So Jack 10 years ago was sent away to become a bard, which is like a musician, and now 10 years later he's being summoned back because girls from his town are going missing. And throughout all of this, he is having to work with Adara, who was his childhood nemesis. She is now the princess of this region, and on the island there are 2 halves and they're kind of like battling each other. Anywho, they're trying to track down why these girls are going missing, how to get them back, and in doing so, they are contacting the elemental spirits through his magic, and it's such an exceptional story, and it goes down ways I had no idea was going to happen. Oh my gosh, the plot twist had me gagged. It's just such an exceptional story, and I rated it 4.5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I absolutely adored this book when I first listened to it. I listened to it in a day, and it's just so incredible, and the back of the book does not do it justice at all. I remember before I read it, the back confused me so much. So there are like so many plot lines in this book as well. So Alex, also known as Galaxy, was recruited to Yale University in order to work with the secret societies working within Yale and basically supervise them because they are magic based, and so she would supervise the rituals that they do. And the main reason why Galaxy was recruited was because she naturally has the ability to see ghosts. And there are definitely some really bad things that come with that she delves into. But one night when she is supervising ritual, a murder happens in New Haven, which is the town where Yale is, and she's like, I honest to God think this might be related. So she starts looking into it, delving deeper and deeper into what is going on. And while that is happening, the person who was supposed to be her mentor and teach her how to do this has gone missing. And it is such a tangled web, and it's so impeccable. I honestly think this was my first dark academia book, and it was the perfect introduction to the genre for me. And I rated that 5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So, if anyone's keeping score, so far, all of the books I've read by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I rated 5 stars. Granted, that's only 2 books. Daisy Jones and the Six and this. They are both 5-star books for me. So, this book is about, obviously, Carrie Soto. She was a major tennis phenomenon superstar, like, I believe a decade ago in the story. And the sexism that operates within the sport is running rampant. And so we definitely see that play into it a lot. But her title of being the most awarded, I believe, female tennis player is about to be in jeopardy, and she decides to come out of retirement, start playing tennis again to defend her title. And it's so good. I listened to the audiobook for this book, and this audiobook was exceptional. It was probably the best audiobook I've ever listened to in my life, because all of the characters, every single one, had a different actor, and it literally made me feel like I was immersed into the story. It was so outstanding, and this book is so incredible, and I thought Carrie was a complete badass. I just absolutely adored her, and I love this book so much. And I also rated that 5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. Hi, Reese. This was my first jump back into the mystery thriller genre in probably a year, and boy was I not disappointed. This book is so good. It follows Ernest Cunningham, and he is going to a winter retreat with his entire family. Think like Knives Out vibes. And he basically goes through and tells each story of how someone in his family has killed someone. While that is going on, this winter retreat is going on, and someone decides they want to start picking off members of his family, and so he's trying to solve it, and he really breaks the fourth wall in this book, and I adore that in this book. He constantly talks about the cliches within mysteries and thrillers. It's just such an exceptional book. The only thing I had a qualm with was the ending, because to me it came a little bit out of left field. But the way it came full circle was just so good, and I absolutely loved this book. And I rated that 4.75, if I didn't already say that. The next book is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This book, I rated 5 stars. I sobbed when I read this book. It is about Harriet and Wynne, and they have recently broken up, and they haven't told any of their friends this. So when they go to this friends trip that they usually go to every year, they pretend they're still together. And it flips in timelines from when they were together, when they were falling in love, and now. And the timeline kind of reminded me of the way 500 Days of Summer works, if you've seen that movie. And that's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it was just such an exceptional book. And this was my first Emily Henry book. And the way she writes just made me feel so deeply. So I loved it so much. Then we have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This was my first Abby Jimenez book. I ate this up. This book is about Alexis and Daniel, and Alexis is way out of the way from where she normally lives, and she ends up getting into an accident, and who comes to her rescue but Daniel? And he pulls her car out of a ditch, I think, and they end up meeting up again at the bar in his small town, and they end up hooking up that first night. And then he's obsessed with her, completely in love with her already, and keeps trying to get her to come back. Meanwhile, she is trying to get rid of her toxic ex from her life, and it's just so good. It's small town, kind of farmer, ranch. I ate it up. I ate it up. Small town always does it for me. And I think I rated it 4.5. The next book we have to talk about is Wait For It by Mariana Zapata. This book is about Diana, and she has assumed custody of her 2 nephews and is obviously struggling with taking care of 2 kids now, and it's just so good. And the kids are absolutely adorable, and the love interest is their grumpy neighbor, and I loved him so much. He was also the coach of one of her nephew's baseball teams, and it's just so good and so cute, and I ate it up. Both of Mariana Zapata's books that I have read, I have also rated 5 stars. It was this and All Roads Lead Here. I love that book. I love children in books so much. It just makes me so happy, and I eat it up every single time. Okay, the next book I'm going to be talking about is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This book, I read this book back in October, I think, and it blew me out of the water. I had not read a soul-bearing, core-shaking book in such a long time, and this was just so exceptional. The main premise of this story is that Kaz is trying to get a crew together to pull off what is essentially an impossible heist. And the entire crew has just such intricate, interwoven relationships with one another. Inej and Kaz, I just don't have enough words to describe how I feel about them. Same with Matthias and Nina. I just absolutely ate up this book. And yes, my anxiety was super high during the actual heist part, but it was just so good and I adored it. Oh my gosh, it was so good. It was so good, and I'm so excited to get to the next book in the series. That was 5 stars, if you couldn't pick up on that, by the way. The last best book I have to talk about is Addicted to You by Kristen Becker-Ritchie. This was the first book I read this year, I think, and I was not prepared. for what this book would do to me. The second I started reading it, it gave me Magnolia Parks vibes. This book is about Lily and Lauren, and they have been best friends forever, and everyone in their lives thinks they're together. They are not. They just pretend to be together in order to enable each other's addictions. So Lily is addicted to sex, and Lauren is an alcoholic. And they both enable each other heavily, but there's definitely a romance and a tenderness that they feel for one another. It's just so beautiful. And this book is kind of hard to read though, because it's heart-wrenching the way that their addictions are like taking them in their lives. And I really want to get to the rest of the series. I know it's going to be hard to read. Also, why did no one mention that the people in these books are literally like Upper East Side level rich? Because I've heard so many people crack on about these books, and I've never heard that people say they are rich, ever. But I loved the book. I rated it 4.5 stars, and I am very much so looking forward to getting into the series more in the upcoming year. Now that we have talked about the good books, let's talk about the bad books. Now, this one, the first book I have to mention, is the worst book I have ever put in front of my face and absorbed into my brain. And that is Things I Wanted to Say by Monica Murphy. This book, I loathed with every fiber of my being. I finished this, unfortunately, because I wanted to see how it was even possible for them to redeem these characters. They did not. I don't remember the characters' names. I don't want to learn the characters' names again. But the guy in this book steals this girl's journal, and they've always hated each other. And so he steals her journal and is like, I will not give this back to you unless you sleep with me. And that is sexual assault. If I'm being unclear about that, that is sexual assault. Because you are coercing someone into sleeping with you. And it just got worse. I mean, the sister, I thought, had good in her. She was a complete I hated just about every character in this book, and the romance was not romancing. I was trying so hard to give them a chance. I literally hated it so much, and I will never pick up another Monica Murphy book ever again. Never again. Next book, Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, I think. I tried reading this. It was just so cringy to me, and it was really just rubbing me the wrong way. I have no other way to describe it than the fact that it felt wrong. But the premise of that book is that this girl's, I believe, twin sister goes missing, and she like tries to figure out what's going on, and I believe she finds out that her sister was trying to get engaged to one of the princes of hell, and then one of the other princes of hell shows up to help her, I think. I don't know. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. The next one is The Boys of Brayshaw High. I forget who this is by. Let me look it up. Megan Brandy. That's why it surprised me that I didn't like this book, because Megan Brandy wrote Say You Swear, and I loved that book. I read it in one night. But this book is about a girl who comes to a new high school, and these guys basically run the school, and they kind of like take her under their wing. She kind of has a thing going with one of the guys. But then there's like a moment in the first book where it gets like all three of the guys are involved with her, and it just really gave me the ick, and I didn't, that's not for me. It's not for me. So I chose to put that book down. But if you're into that, more power to you. The next book we have is The Night Shift by Annie Crown. I read this and there was no plot. It's about a girl working in a library, and like the jock of the college comes in hoping for help on a project. She helps him. They kind of like start to be interested in each other, and there's a conflict that happens, but it's like 30% of the way through the book, and then it gets resolved super fast, and then the last like 50% of the book is just smut. And I finished it because I was like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, there's no way that was the final conflict. It was. I'm not really about those kinds of books personally anymore, but if you liked it, I'm so happy for you. The next one. This one kind of pains me to do because I really do like 95% of Elle Kennedy's works, but The Dare by Elle Kennedy. I DNF'd this because the main girl was dared to ask this hockey guy like up to her room or something by her sorority sisters, and in the book, within the first like 10% of the book, she discussed her eating habits and the size of her body way too much for my liking. And it honestly made me concerned that if I were to continue reading, it would affect my mental health, because I've struggled with those kinds of like thoughts, and I'm not gonna choose to read about someone having those thoughts if they're constantly thinking about it. So I put that book down. The next one, again, this pains me to do because Binding and Keeping 13 are two of my favorite books of like all time, but the last two books in the Ocean Bay series by Chloe Walsh, I did not like those books at all. I wanted to see where the characters went with it, but I did not like the books. It is about the original Ocean Bay book. It's a step-sibling romance. I enjoyed that. A little bit weird, but I enjoyed that book. Then the next two are about their best friends and how they used to be friends when they were children, like literally best friends ever. And something happened to the girl where they moved away, and now they're back, and it was a whole thing. And the second and third books were only like 200 pages each, but the first book in the series was like 450 pages. And I feel like she could have absolutely put them in the same exact book, but I don't really know why she didn't. It wasn't for me. Again, it wasn't for me. I just personally wasn't about it. The next one we have to talk about is Dirty Laundry by, who is this by? I honestly forget. Dirty Laundry by Disha Bose. Again, I might be mispronouncing that because I'm pretty sure it's an Irish name. So this book did something I hate murder mysteries to do, which is they give us the death in the first like 20 pages of the book, and then it cuts to like a month before that. The woman that does get murdered made me furious constantly. I loathed this woman. I would have killed her myself if I was in this story. But it was the most unsatisfying thing ever. This is gonna make me sound like a horrible person, but it's fictitious. I would never say this about a real person. I wish she died in a more satisfying way. I mean, she really should have gotten hers, and she kind of didn't. I mean, she died, but it wasn't satisfying to me at all. And that's just my own problem with the story, but if you enjoyed it, again, So glad for you. Now, this is a recent DNF, the next one, and I haven't really spoken about it on my channel yet. And I previously spoke very highly about the first 2 books in the series, so I'm a little nervous to say this, but I DNF'd As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. That is the 3rd and final installment in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I couldn't do it. Pip has consistently had a super strong moral compass in the 1st and 2nd installments in the series, and she completely loses it in the 3rd. Like, it's gone. And she was like a completely different character. I just wasn't enjoying it. I didn't like it. I think she should have done things a whole lot differently. No. No. Sorry. Not for me. Try again next time. Okay, the last 2, I wouldn't even say I, like, hate them. I mean, I wouldn't say I hate a lot of these, but these were ones that I could have them on this list, or I could take them off and just make the list shorter, because they weren't that bad. But it's My Life with the Walter Boys by Ali Novak. And the only reason I am putting this on this list is because what the was that ending? That was the most unsatisfying thing I have ever had, like, heard in my entire life. I wish it was some, like, it literally leaves it like there should be a 2nd book in the series, and there's not. It's a standalone romance book. But I am happy to hear, though, that the TV show is getting a 2nd season. So I'm very intrigued with what they're going to do with that, because they definitely did change some things from the book, but I think it's going to be good. Hopefully. I mean, it's a cringy show, but I mean, it's the good kind of cringe that I'm going to go back and watch again. The last book we have to talk about is Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett. And now, don't get me wrong, it was a cute little fluffy YA romance, but the conflict was so dumb, in my opinion, because so the plot of this book is that this girl has moved to this beach town where this guy she's been talking to online lives. And while she's chatting with this guy online, she meets this guy at her new job, and they start hitting it off, and they start hanging out and kind of like dating. And surprise, surprise, they're messaging each other online. And this guy takes it as like a grievous offense that she was cheating on him and like chatting with another guy. But he was doing the exact same thing. And it was so drawn out and such a long conflict. It was just so stupid. Like, get over it. You were doing the same thing. I don't get it. But maybe I would have understood if I were younger and in a younger mindset still, but I'm not. So, what can you do? But those are the 10 best and 10 worst books I read this past year. Thank you guys so much if you stayed this far until the video. I hope you all are having an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you guys are in the world, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.